All right, sub here. Today we got some interesting news. Actually, I think it's really good news, and I think a lot of people will ultimately agree. It's a long time coming, but Call of Duty announced that they are overhauling the Call of Duty HQ feature, which, as most of us who have played Call of Duty, both before Warzone 2 and now, will attest, the HQ menu system and just the UI in Call of Duty right now is dog shit, and that's putting it nicely. For reference, the Warzone 2.0 Modern Warfare, 2 launch era introduced, this COD HQ system, and they brought in this new UI, which was very side scrolly, and everybody said, hey, it looks a lot like Hulu. And then they went through and found out that senior designers at Hulu had been hired by Activision to work on it. Shocking. And what worked well on a television or on your iPad was horrible in a game scenario, right? And so I surmised back then that this was designed around the idea of bringing Warzone to mobile, right? Because they had announced Warzone Mobile at the time. Warzone Mobile, of course, took well over a year to launch and didn't launch until after Modern Warfare 3 came out, which left us with this atrocious UI and an atrocious experience of trying to navigate menus, right? To this day, I am still vexed and incredibly frustrated with the menus. They are awful. So today, Call of Duty announced that they are going to actually redo it starting soon, and implementing it all the way through October, where we get a brand new complete user experience, which will actually see Warzone decoupled from a parent game for the first time, which is a huge W, right? So they talked. Charlie Intel had a great article about it. They talked a lot about optimization and shrinking file sizes, and kind of relying a bit more on streaming assets, all of which is, I think, generally positive. The streaming one is going to depend on your internet situation. For those of you on fiber, no problem. For the rest of us, I don't know how well it's going to play. We'll have to see how it goes. But this over all this is all the new UI, right? It's their first impression for us, and ultimately, I think it's a big W. It looks cleaner, it looks easier to navigate. Looks like they have some optimization, some customization options. Hopefully, we can arrange things the way we want it. So, versus the endless side scrolling of every option and the way they were doing it before. So I think this is a big W. I think this is a good introduction, but I see a lot of pushback online. A lot of people are they're upset that they are sticking with the COD HQ idea because it's been so cumbersome and awful to use. And I think what I want to share and kind of explain as best I can, as someone who has been in the tech industry, even though I am not I don't work on the game. I've never worked for Activision, but I've worked on systems that operate very similarly to how Call of Duty has structured themselves, and for companies that seem to operate in a very similar manner to how Call of Duty or how Activision operates, right? And based on conversations I've had with devs that worked there. That's been reinforced to me. So, so with that, let's talk a little bit about COD HQ, what it actually is versus what we see it as, because that to me is a big deal, and it's important to understand that there's a distinction there. So, what Call of Duty is it's like a unified foundation for Call of Duty HQ, the launcher, right? It's a unified foundation for all the games. So, in the past, every game kind of started from scratch, right? There would be like a basic engine that they would have, like IW8, IW7. We're on IW9, right? Which is actually a derivative of like IW6 or something like that. That's how far back some of the code goes, is my understanding. But the engine itself is kind of like the foundation of a house, right? So if you build a foundation, right, you can make the house look all kinds of different ways off the same foundation, right? You can have different colors, everything from like the paint color to how tall it is to some of the cosmetics that you put on it, what type of windows, right? None of that affects the foundation. So Call of Duty HQ as a foundation, right, it is set up so that every game can interchange with one another in different aspects. And the most important way to view this is through Warzone, right? Because Warzone is the free-to-play, everything applies to it game, right? So everything feeds into Warzone. All the assets have to be playable on Warzone. All the character models, all the guns, and it has to feel the same seamlessly between games. So what they did with COD HQ is they created a foundation, and they said everybody's going to build off the same foundation, and they're going to build it in such a way that doesn't matter what game you are on, all the assets are interchangeable, okay, at the end of the day. So what does that mean for us? Well, when we see COD HQ as users, we see the interface, right? We see the tiles and the scrolling and all of that stuff. And we look at previous menus and other interfaces that we've had in the past, and we say, well, I want that back, okay? And we conflate the interface that we're presented with COD HQ as a fundamental principle, and we say, well, COD HQ sucks because this interface is bad. The reality is, COD HQ, from my point of view and from the evidence in front of us, is working really well as intended. It's just decorated like a rabid squirrel was set loose in Home Goods, okay? It is the tools they gave us to interface with it are bad, okay? And in making this change and updating the UI, they're acknowledging that that was bad and that we want to move away from that, and it's taken them this long to actually get around to doing that. So W Treyarch, I'm sure they're driving this. On top of that, we know the foundations are good because the migration from Modern Warfare 2 to Modern Warfare 3 was nearly flawless, right? There were very few major problems. We've had little hiccups here and there. That one time that the screen would give you like an epileptic seizure, right, on Season 1 Reloaded, I think it was. But those are like one-off issues, not systemic issues that we've had in the past. I take it back to Caldera. When Caldera came out, right, the integration with Warzone was horrible, right? For console players, like Xbox could barely play the game half the time. It was so bad. When Modern Warfare 2 launched, PC players couldn't even play the game, right? It just would not load depending on your NVIDIA driver. It would just crash incessantly. So when Modern Warfare 3 came out, we didn't really have these issues, okay? Because they'd been sorted out, because the foundation didn't change. So the core infrastructure remained intact. What we are upset with is not the HQ system. What we're upset with is the way it's presented to us and the UI they've given us. So in this case, what they're doing is they're saying, look, the UI sucks. We're sorry. We're going to fix it. And that's great, and I'm glad they are. With the uncoupling of Warzone and creating its own standalone launcher, which is what they're doing here, it kind of opens the door, I think, to make it easier to make changes that are Warzone specific without upsetting the core infrastructure of the game. So what I think is good, why this is a really good thing at the end of the day, is it doesn't seem like they're disrupting the foundation of the game, okay? The stability, I know it's not totally stable, but the general stability of it and the ability to add features and update the game without creating the massive problems that we had in Warzone 1, right? We all remember every time they changed the map, every season, it would be like a week of just complete disaster. And sometimes it would go longer than that. Okay. We had some pretty bad bugs that stuck around for a long time. In fact, if you remember, they canceled an entire season of Vanguard because the Warzone integration was so broken. It took them all the way through Christmas into the new year and darn near to February before they actually got it functioning, for most players across the board. And that was the problem of trying to add mechanics from Vanguard into Modern Warfare 2019, where Warzone lived. In this case, instead of it, and that's because Vanguard was built on its own branch of the engine as it saw fit. Same with Cold War, right? They did their own things the way they've always done, but this time they had to tie them together into the same game. So where that will also benefit us from, with is things like double XP tokens, right? Those carry cleanly from Modern Warfare 2 to Modern Warfare 3, right? If you remember when Vanguard was out, the tokens in Vanguard that you earned in Vanguard didn't work in Warzone. Or is it the other way around? It didn't work one way, right? So you would have, the Warzone tokens you had in Warzone, tokens from Modern Warfare 2019, did not work in Vanguard. So you had to boot up Warzone, start a double XP token, then quit, then load up Vanguard and use it in the multiplayer, right? We don't have that problem anymore. If you want to pop a double XP token playing zombies, if you want to pop the double XP token in Call of Duty 2, if you're still playing that for some reason, you can. You just hit the button and off it goes. And that's a result of a unified engine, right? It's also going to be a huge benefit for things like new weapons, right? It is, right? So like Vanguard would introduce a new weapon, if you remember, and they would add that to Warzone. And a lot of times things were a little bit different between it. It could have a little bit of different feel. The movement speed would feel different because Vanguard had a faster base movement speed than Warzone did. And then if you also remember, I'm going to point out they never really allowed the Modern Warfare 2019 guns to be back in the meta. And Ted Timmons had an interview about this, and he was talking about it. And one of the things he said is, hey, look, that's all tied to Modern Warfare 2019. We can't touch those guns at a base level without screwing up what's going on in Modern Warfare 2019. It would affect the multiplayer, it would affect single player, it would affect all these other aspects of that game. And so Modern Warfare 2019 guns were basically dumpstered until they got to the end of the entire series, and they basically said, we're just going to ditch it all and move on to Warzone 2. And then they didn't care at that point. They did whatever they wanted. So, and it left kind of 2019 kind of broken, if I remember right. So we need to look at these changes and this idea of COD HQ as what it is. It is a great foundation to build games on, and hopefully we should see that with the launch of Black Ops 6 and then the integration, which is going to be a two-phase integration now, right? You have the integration of the guns and the movement when we're into Warzone, and then you'll have the integration of a new map, okay? So those aspects are what COD HQ does. That's the foundational principle of COD HQ, and it's great, okay? The UI, the experience, the user interface, the design choices they give us to interface with, those have been bad, okay? And those should be criticized until the end of Earth, and no game company should ever do that again, all right? They should learn that gaming UI and television video watching UI are completely different things, and they should not combine the two. That's the lesson we should learn here. But just because the UI is bad, because the experience of using this app the way that we have been has been bad for us as end users, it doesn't mean that the purpose of the HQ app is bad. In fact, it's been, from what I can tell, very good It has been very well executed, and it's being used been used to deliver ultimately a very good update experience for us as users. Even though we have things we complain about, the actual user interface aspect of it has been great. So that's what I got. Honestly, I think it's a W update. I think it's really good that they're fixing the UI and they're finally giving us something that's not utter crap. Let's keep in mind when we criticize things, we have our comments and our feedback, that UI and base architecture are not the same, right? They're not interchangeable. Criticizing one doesn't mean that you have to scrap the other, okay? That's where we got to take the approach from. With that, I'm going to catch you on the next one.